Hello everyone, my name is Gabby. I'm a veterinarian graduated in Ecuador, and I'm here to talk a little bit about my experience with the PAVE program to validate my license in the United States. I want to talk about why I chose PAVE rather than ECFVG for my licensing process. We can talk a little bit about the NAVLE, doing it before or during the clinical rotations, like the pros and cons, and we can talk a little bit about my experience in the rotations in a future video. But if you have any questions, you can post them here. Things that I will not be talking about in this video are the basic steps of the ECFVG or PAVE. I think that there's already a lot of information available in YouTube videos. There's a lot of people who talk about it in like the subreddits or like the groups that are available in forums. I also think that the websites detail very nicely the requirements or documents that you need for these steps. So I think that we can focus more on other things. Additionally, I cannot talk about anything related to immigration status because I honestly do not have the experience. I am a citizen of the United States, so I did not have to process a visa or things like that. I know that the visa that you need for the school year is the F1, so maybe you can investigate a little bit more about it, but unfortunately I don't have the experience, so I cannot respond those questions. So why I decided to choose PAVE rather than ECFVG? I graduated as a vet in 2016 in Ecuador, and I practiced as a veterinarian only for 1 year prior to making the decision of moving to the States. Here I spent many years working as a technician in a state that did not require me to have license to practice that work. So not having a lot of experience as a practicing veterinarian was one of the first reasons why I decided to go through the PAVE program. I feel that going through the clinical rotations were going to help me a lot to become like very grounded and also to be informed about like the work culture in the United States. So that was my first reason. The second one is the fact that I always wanted to experience how like the academic environment in veterinary medicine was in the United States. I feel that even if you graduate as a vet in other countries, it is not the same. Here in the United States, when you go through the rotations, means that you're pretty much working in a academic specialty hospital, and that experience on its own, it's something that I always wanted to experience. And out of the two programs, the only one that was going to provide that experience to me was the PAVE program. Additionally, I know that this is something that you can do with either of the paths. Like, it's not that you have to go through the PAVE program if you want to get like letters of recommendation for like internships or things like that. But I personally wanted to be close to specialty clinicians. Since I did not have a lot of experience as a practicing veterinarian, I did not know a lot of doctors that would be able to provide me with letters. And also, it's like a known rule, not necessarily rule, it's not obligatory, but I feel that it is better. I think they have like more weight when the letters come from specialty clinicians. So the best way for me to get close to them, learn from them, and be evaluated by them was going to go through the clinical rotations to obtain my letters of recommendation. So that is another reason why I chose PAVE rather than ECFVG. One of the most important factors that I think you must consider if you decide to go through the PAVE process is the fact that the financial investment is not cheap. This means that you will have to be prepared not only to pay for the school year cost, but also for living expenses, which will include housing, transportation, food, occasional entertainment, and you also have some extra expenses like the medical and liability insurance, which are requirements for you as a student. I think most universities will offer medical insurance, but they are not included in the cost of the school year. So you have to pretty much sum all this money by the time that you arrive or you start like the school year. Now, it is important to mention that the schools themselves will not offer you payment plans, and if they do, it's usually just to pay like over 3 or 4 months rather than one payment alone. But if you want to pay for this over the years, it is not with the school directly. It is something that you will have to figure out with a loaning office. I, for example, took a student loan to pay for all of these expenses that will allow me to pay over the years. A lot of people do it, even if they are like, if they will have to get the money in their own countries, they pay through wire transfer. But I just want to tell you that it is possible. You just have to have that financial responsibility. But it is definitely possible. I don't think like almost anybody will have this amount of money just out of pocket. But as long as you're responsible, you will definitely be able to do it. Now let's talk a little bit about the NAVLE. So the North American Veterinary Licensing Exam is the exam that every student or every veterinary graduate in the States has to pass in order to obtain their license, regardless of the state where you plan on practicing. And as a PAVE student or as a PAVE applicant, you have two options. You're eligible to take this test once you have passed all the first 3 steps, or you have the options of doing the clinical rotations and taking the NAVLE during or after the rotation. I personally took this test prior my clinical rotations. I wanted to give it a try, knowing that if for any reason I did not pass, my next step would be to try and do it during the clinical rotations. Fortunately, I did pass and I didn't have to do this. But I want to mention, like, pretty much all the 4th year students do the NAVLE in the middle of the school year. I have to mention that there are for sure like some pros about it. Is the fact that I do consider that the clinical rotations are very, very helpful when it comes to preparing for the NAVLE, because you're doing like day to day, you're practicing day to day things that are like related to this exam. You're reviewing concepts, and I personally feel that when I was doing my clinical rotations, even when I had already passed this exam, many of the concepts or topics that we are discussing in the NAVLE or studying in the NAVLE made a lot more sense, like were a lot easier for me to understand. So I definitely think that is helpful. But this also means that you have to be able to manage your time very well. You cannot step away from your responsibilities as a student during the clinical year just because you want to say that you're studying, because everyone is going through the same. So there's nothing special about it. But I do have to say, like, since most students actually take the NAVLE during this year, it's definitely something possible. So it's definitely doable. Now, the positive aspect about taking it before the clinical rotations is that you don't have to manage this extra time for studying during the rotations, but at the same time you may need like to focus a lot in those concepts that you may not have like a fully grasp on. Like, I personally feel that a challenge for me was to study large animal topics, but as I mentioned, like, either way it's possible. I just wanted you to know that if for any reason you did not pass or you're thinking about doing the clinical year, either way is possible and you're capable of doing it. So we have come to the end of this video. This is just the part 1, but if you have any questions about the NAVLE or about the things that I mentioned that you must consider about the PAVE program, you can definitely write them on the comment section. You can ask me questions, and I know that I will take the time at some point to read them and respond them to the best of my abilities. If the questions are about like the first few steps or like the basic aspects of the PAVE program, I definitely recommend you to read a little bit about the program itself on the website. There are a lot of resources. You can go to the Facebook page, you can ask questions there, or you can go to the Reddit. There's like a subreddit only for ECFVG and PAVE, which I think is pretty helpful. I have answered a lot of questions myself there. So see you there and good luck.